Well, this state just snuck through the biggest firearms ban in America right now, and today I'm going to fill you in on exactly how they were able to sneak this through and how this bill basically went from a 500 words fairly straightforward bill to now over 2,600 words and the banning of pretty much every gun that has ever been made, plus even assault pistols as well. That's what we're going to look at today. And of course, I want to hear your opinion if you're somebody that's from Hawaii. I think this probably won't surprise you as much, but if you're not from Hawaii, you may be surprised as to how far this state actually goes to restrict Second Amendment rights all the way around. And this is pretty much going to make them probably number one on every town and all of their stupid lists of gun restrictive states, the best gun restrictive states, according to them. And so we're going to talk about this. And this is kind of why, even though if you're a gun owner and you hate politics, you still have to keep an eye on this stuff, because largely, according to some out in Hawaii, a lot of citizens don't even know this is happening. Pretty scary. So anyways, if you live in Hawaii, or if you don't, leave your opinion down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, let me tell you how this whole thing started. Bill SB 893 was originally designed to restrict 50 caliber weapons. This is not a great look, but it was very straightforward, 500 words, okay? Now, this of course excluded any of your antiques and black powder guns, still very restrictive, totally disagree with it. But it was 500 words and fairly straightforward. Well, it actually didn't hit the Senate committee's deadline, so it was basically done for another year. Well, they reworded SB 893 into SB 401, and what went from a 500 word bill got upped to 2,600 word bill. But they're not just looking at 50 caliber weapons, of course that's included, and you can keep your muzzle loaders according to them, because that's about all Hawaii feels is truly protected by the Second Amendment. But now, your semi-autos, anything that takes a detachable magazine, of course they've already been very restrictive on the amount of rounds you can hold and all of that, but essentially every single semi-auto, rifle, shotgun, and even assault pistols. I've never seen this before. Maybe I've been missing something, but Hawaii literally says assault pistols, you're done. Can't have them. Essentially all guns with detachable mags banned. Now, if you already own these weapons according to Hawaii, they're not going to take them away from you. You're able to exercise your rights, but anybody that looks to possess, transfer, gift, whatever, you can no longer own those guns in that state. This is the same state, by the way, where I looked up how many concealed carry permits they actually have, and it showed 0K. Like not 1K, not 2K, not 10K, 0K. So I had to find out how many concealed carry permit holders there actually are, and I found, according to Google, there was actually 2,207. This represents about 0.02% of the population, which has to be probably the lowest of any state in our union. Now, this ban largely follows kind of the 94 to 2004 crime bill or assault weapons ban, where any gun that accepts a magazine, detachable magazine, or I think even fixed magazine of 10 rounds or more cannot be imported or sold any longer in the state. Now, John Abbott of the Hawaii Firearms Coalition said, well, look, what about the M1A, right? It holds 20 rounds. It has a bayonet lug. It has a threaded barrel, right, for a flash hider. This is going to be banned. What about the M1 carbine? They don't make 10-round mags for the M1 carbine. They actually went a step above what Colorado did, where Colorado was like, hey, you know what? The Ruger Mini 30, that gun's okay. The Ruger M1A, totally fine. The M1 carbine, you can have those, which largely shows me that they got people in the committee that basically looked at a list of like older guns and said, yeah, all these should be totally fine. The wood and steel, right? Yeah, they're totally harmless. But these new modern guns, oh, those are awful. You can't have those. So pretty much somebody that doesn't know guns. Unfortunately, whoever wrote this in Hawaii does know firearms. They do know, oh, M1A. Right? We're able to basically ban all of these guns. Now, David Tarnas is actually the main proponent of this bill. And he says, no, this isn't going to ban pretty much all guns, just the assault style guns. Those with pistol grips and threaded mags and those vertical grips that people use when they're shooting full autos. Now, you just heard that Correct. Yeah, the vertical grips that people use when they're shooting full autos, that's the type of features and guns they want to ban. Not realizing that pretty much every semi-auto gun out there, every single one as far as I know, even the lever actions now, even the Ruger 1022 behind me has an M-LOK slot where you could technically put a vertical grip on it, and they're all semi-auto. And it was snuck in. Like, this thing was supposed to be done for another year, and they were able to rewrite it, revamp it to be even more dangerous than what it was before, and somehow get it passed through the House, and now it goes to the Senate for another vote. And if it reaches the governor's desk, you best believe this thing is gonna be signed. This is a dangerous precedent that's been set above California, above Colorado, above even what's happening in Oregon. From concealed carry to the types of guns you have to assault pistols, this state is looking to essentially eliminate the Second Amendment all the way around. And that's primarily what they've done. So features, magazines, and the guns themselves. Where the crime bill, which I say there's similar portions to the crime bill. It's not exactly like that because remember, guns were still allowed during that 94 to 2004 period, but it was features that they banned. Now you notice that, some states go to features as well, right? Magazines, detachable mags, right? And now we're seeing a push for the guns themselves because it's never good enough. This just shows you states like Colorado, Hawaii, California, Oregon, they just will continue to strip them down or make it so hard for citizens where people are like, why do I have to do this? For example, in order to buy a gun in Hawaii, you have to get a permit for every single handgun that you buy. Now there's a 14-day waiting period on every single gun as well. You turn in your passport photos, you're fingerprinted, and you have to give a reason why you need, let's just say, a concealed carry permit. Now, last year I was looking at the Hawaii Firearms Coalition, and they were saying that once this new law passed where basically you had to be certified in order to get a concealed carry, and then law enforcement had to sign off on it, you had to give them a reason why. Well, at that time they had no firearms instructors in order to even do the classes. So now people were like, they were standing in long lines, they were waiting to get this before the law went into effect. Every single gun in Hawaii, by the way, has to be registered. Now it's funny because their version of the Second Amendment pretty much follows the Constitution, but it does not follow the Constitution in practice at all. Black powder guns, by the way, do not have to be registered, but you still have to have a permit to purchase those. And it's amazing just hearing the residents of Hawaii and the things they say, like, yeah, we're doing great. We actually, still have a Second Amendment, but then we also have restrictions in place for the people that don't need them. For instance, if you've done any kind of counseling, right, in the state of Hawaii, and this is what drives me so crazy, because we talk about removing the stigma of mental health, and yet, if you've had any kind of counseling for any kind of mental health and they deem you unqualified to own a gun, you're done. When we talk about improving mental health, it is not meant as a barrier for people to exercise their rights. Removing the stigma is something that you should do, but also having resources available to people so they can get the help they need is quite another, right? But not using this as an excuse to remove people's firearms. Hawaii is trying to check off all of these boxes that every town and all these crazy organizations put in place. They want their grade to be as low as possible with the NRA, for instance, and they want it to be as high as it possibly can. They want to be able to check off every single gun control box in the state. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, if there's ever gun confiscation in the United States, I believe Hawaii will be the first place they would try it. Not that they would succeed, but I believe it would be the first place they try it, because that's where registration is happening, and you just see continuation of gun owners trying to fight this, but because of the people, unfortunately, that are voted in, they're just unable to stop it. Now, there is still a little bit of time where residents of Hawaii can call and hopefully have this bill reversed. Like I said, it's going back to the Senate now, but it's going to be an uphill battle. And of course, there's going to be firearm groups that sue over this, and hopefully they'll win it out. But just like we saw recently, where lower level courts may sue, they may give residents additional time, but eventually another court, a higher court, comes in and says, oh yeah, this is totally constitutional. And you can't depend on the Supreme Court at this point to save your rights at all. Pretty unbelievable, but that is what's going on in Hawaii. And I know a lot of people don't live there, right? And you don't think that it's going to affect you. But just like people are feeling in Colorado and Oregon now, it's like, where did this come from? We used to be a free state. Now we're not. And that's kind of, what you have to consider. Right? Every single election on a local, state, and of course federal level, they all mean something. And you start to see this slow progression and erosion of your rights. And the Second Amendment is one of the first ones that they will come after. Stay vigilant, and remember that this can pretty much happen anywhere. Of course, I'd love to hear your opinion too. If you're a resident of Hawaii, how do you see all this going down? How long did it take for you to realize that your rights were being eroded? Even if you don't live out there, leave your opinion down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.